Hey there.
Great.
All right, folks. I think we're going to get this show on the road. Thank you all for joining us. As I just mentioned, we're happy to take questions during the presentation. Just unmute yourself and speak. But when you're not asking questions, if you could just keep yourself on mute, we'll limit that background noise. Start off by introducing ourselves. My name is Andrew Zimdahl. I go by AZ, and I've got my esteemed colleague here, Julian BLT. We're the founders of Honeydew Energy Advisors. And we primarily, we have a big focus on solar deployment here in the DC and DMV area. But our big initiative this year is helping folks comply with DC's new building energy performance standards. And that, of course, is the topic of our webinar today. I'm going to just put this on full screen. And let's do a brief overview of the topic. First, we're going to talk about the difference between benchmarking and the BEPS program, though they are interrelated. Then we're going to talk about the different pathways that will help you comply with this new BEPS standard. Then we're going to talk about everybody's favorite topic, what happens if you fail to comply, what are the penalties for that, or the fees as they call them. And then we're going to look at how you can actually, what improvements you can make to improve your Energy Star score and lower your energy usage intensity. And finally, we're going to talk about what type of impact a solar PV system could have on your Energy Star score. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Julian, who can talk about what benchmarking is.
Thanks, AZ. So just a quick overview of benchmarking. I'm sure most of you are already aware of this, but benchmarking has been required at least for buildings above 50,000 square feet every single year since 2014. What is benchmarking? So it's essentially a way to score your building's efficiency compared to other buildings of similar space types and sizes all around the country. You essentially start out by creating an account on Energy Star Portfolio Manager. In there, you create an account for your building. You input all of the building characteristics. So that includes the square footage of your building, the different space types, garages, commercial spaces below an association, for example, number of units, number of bedrooms, percentage of the building that's heated and cooled, so on and so forth. And you also upload the last year's energy and water usage. So that includes gas, electric, and water. With that, the benchmarking software, Energy Star Portfolio, will create a score for your building rated 1 through 100, 1 being the least efficient and 100 being the most efficient. Now, if you cannot get an Energy Star score for any reason, it'll provide you with an EUI score. It'll provide you with an EUI score regardless, but you really don't need to focus on that unless you cannot receive an Energy Star score. Those buildings are usually shopping plazas, retail stores, but for multifamily buildings, which most of you either manage or you own a unit within a multifamily building, they all will receive an Energy Star score. And if you're curious to see what your score is, you can always go to energybenchmarkingdc.org, type in your address, and it'll show you the most updated score. If we've done your benchmarking, you can just ask us and we can give you the last 2 years of your Energy Star score. Any questions?
And just to put a fine point on it, we're going to be referring to EUI a lot in this presentation. So EUI, again, is energy usage intensity. Just think of it as adding all of your electric costs, all of your natural gas costs, and then dividing it by the area of your building. That is your EUI. It's just a one measurement of energy efficiency, whereas the Energy Star score is a relative measure of efficiency that compares you to other buildings of the same type.
Thanks for that, AZ. So as I mentioned, for buildings above 50,000 square feet, they've been required to report their benchmarking scores since April 1st, 2014. Now for buildings above 25,000 square feet, those new buildings will be required to benchmark starting next year using 2021's energy and water usage data. In 2024, the OEE is going to require a certified engineer to verify all of your benchmarking data and make sure that the score is accurate. This cannot be done by the company who's benchmarking your building, because obviously that could be biased. So at that time, for buildings that, or for management firms that we're working with, we'll be providing a few different options for engineering firms that can provide these verification services. And at that time, you'll know for sure that your score is as accurate as possible. They'll be going around your building, measuring the square footage, making sure the number of units is correct, making sure the number of bedrooms is accurate, the percentage of your building that's heated and cooled is accurate, so on and so forth. And then for the last tranche of buildings, 10,000 square feet and above, they will not have to benchmark until April 1st, 2025. And then their verification will begin in 2027. So that's a ways out, but if you do fall in the category, it doesn't hurt to just start understanding the efficiency of your building.
And I'll just add to that, if you're not sure, if you're not confident in the square footage of your building right now, I would recommend hiring a firm to verify the square footage this year, because that's not going to change between now and 2024. So we can always go back in 2024 to hire that firm to look at to verify your energy usage. But it's better to have a really good grasp of what your total area is before you're actually required to verify that. That way we can make an accurate assessment as to what your EUI and Energy Star score actually is before we make recommendations on how to improve your building's performance. And with that, I'm going to take it over and talk about what the BEPS program is and how it's distinct from the benchmarking program. So again, BEPS is Building Energy Performance Standards. This is the law of the land right now in DC. It will likely become the law of the land in Montgomery County beginning next year, although their program is still being formulated. Not a lot of other jurisdictions in the country has this, so we really are on the cutting edge in terms of our energy efficiency requirements. It was created by the DC Energy Omnibus Act of 2018. That did a few things, include bolster the price of SRECs, and helped create the DC Green Bank, which can help finance some of these improvements that you make through the BEPS program. And what it says in terms of the basics of BEPS is that it's going to look at your Energy Star score from either 2018 or 2019 if you don't have good data from 2018. And if that score is below DC's median Energy Star score for that particular type of property, then you'll be subject to BEPS, and you're going to need to either make some improvements to the energy efficiency performance of your building, or be subject to a civil penalty. These are done in 5-year compliance cycles. So it's going to look at your start year of either 2018 or 2019 data, and it's going to look at the end year, 5 years from now, so in 2026, and it's going to make a comparison to see how much you've improved your score, depending on what compliance path you pick, which we're going to go over in a subsequent slide. So here's a good example of what BEPS scores are, what that median DC score is. And if you're below that score, you're going to be subject to BEPS. So most of you, I think, are focused on the multi-unit residential or the multifamily. So anybody with a score below 66 is going to have to do something for this program. And that correlates to an EUI score, or an energy usage intensity score, of 111. So again, if you're below 66 as a multi-unit residential, you're going to have to do something to improve your score. And that's different depending on what type of building you have. So if you're a K through 12 school, you're only going to be subject to BEPS if you're under 36. So what we can infer from these numbers is that within DC, multifamily buildings are more efficient than most other multifamily buildings across the country. But K through 12 schools are less efficient than most other K through 12 schools across the country. And hence they have a lower threshold for compliance. And it's going to be easier for K through 12 schools to comply with this law. On the other hand, you have office buildings, which have a BEPS standard of 71, meaning we have very efficient office buildings here in DC relative to that across the nation. Any questions on this slide before I move on? So what is the BEPS schedule? So Julian went over what the benchmarking schedule is. For BEPS, every building over 50,000 square feet needs to start choosing a compliance pathway this year and begin to make some improvements, because they're going to be subject to the closing of this tranche of BEPS in 2026. For buildings over 25,000 square feet, but below 50,000 square feet, they're going to have to start complying with BEPS in 2027. And then the last tranche is 10,000 square feet and above. That's going to start in 2033. But of course, if you want to make improvements now, you're still going to be benefiting from lower operating costs in the meantime. The next section is the different pathways that you could take to comply to BEPS if you are under that median score. And there are 4 pathways: the performance pathway, the standard target pathway, the prescriptive pathway, and the alternative compliance pathway. Most of you are going to be on either the performance or the standard target. The performance is you simply lower your EUI by 20%. If you do that, you won't be subject to any BEPS compliance payments at the end of the cycle. The next is the standard target, which is best for people that are already close to that 66 or whatever that standard target is for their building type. For those people, for those buildings, all you have to do is get your score up to that median when it was set in 2018 or 2019. So most people are going to fall under those 2 pathways. The prescriptive pathway is great for buildings that are in need of more certainty. And what this pathway is that DC Department of Energy and Environment, DOEE, has created a list of improvements and given them a point value. And you can pick and choose from this menu of improvements for your building. And as long as the total number of improvements adds up to 25 points based upon their selection criteria, you will have achieved compliance. And this is great if you are unsure if the improvements that you're going to make are actually going to reduce your EUI by 20% or actually going to increase your Energy Star score to 66. So if you really want certainty and you don't want any risk of not complying with this law, the prescriptive pathway is a good pathway for you to take. The alternative compliance pathway is a little bit complex. It has to do with special circumstances. And it also allows those who want to overachieve, they can make some massive improvements during this compliance cycle, and they may be exempt from the subsequent compliance cycle. So this is great for people who really want to plan far in advance. The other people that will be using the alternative compliance pathway are those that don't have good 2018 benchmarking data. We've seen this. For whatever reason, they don't have good, accurate data from 2018. They can't get it from PEPCO or Washington Gas. So they're relying on 2019 as their start point for seeing if they're able to reduce, their EUI by 20% or improve their Energy Star score. If you don't have good 2018 data, you're going to be on the alternative compliance pathway. But it's important to note that if you're on this, you're still going to be acting as if you were on the performance pathway or the standard target pathway. You're just going to have a different benchmarking start date, but you're still going to have to either bring your Energy Star score to the median or reduce your EUI by 20%. You're just going to be technically under the alternative compliance pathway. And the deadline for when you have to choose what pathway you're on is going to be April 1st, 2023. They extended that a year. It was originally going to be next April. But now you have a whole nother year to choose your pathway, but you're still going to have your energy goals met by 2026. So it's good to start earlier and start making those improvements earlier, because not only will you not be procrastinating, but you're going to be enjoying the economic benefits of reduced operating costs from the improvements that you've made in your building. Any questions?
Just to add to that, regarding the prescriptive pathway, that may seem like one of the best choices, just because you just need to implement some energy conservation measures that both you and the DOE agree upon, hit those points, and then you'll comply whether or not you reduce your energy usage by 20%. However, this pathway does require a lot of steps and deadlines. So for example, first you have to perform the energy audit, which is normal. Most buildings will have to do this regardless of the pathway. But then you have to agree upon which of those energy conservation measures you're going to implement with the DOE. Then you have to send them which contractors you're going to be working with. And then after that, you have to prove that it's been implemented by measuring and verifying your savings. So there's a lot more work involved there, but it could be a good fit for some buildings that really need the certainty, and like AZ mentioned, aren't sure if those conservation measures are actually going to provide the savings. But yeah, sorry. And we'll continue on to if anybody has any questions.
I do.
Mhm.
Okay, three things. When I started this building in this GM site manager position, I inherited something that was ongoing. I'm not sure about the energy bills used for 18 and the benchmark. I had some questions with Mark about that before. But in 2018, we replaced the chiller and the cooling towers with the most energy efficient for this type of building, gravity fed from the roof. Okay, we're seeing, and these towers are it's all computerized. They cut in and out with the outdoor temperature. Okay, I don't know if that was taken into consideration building these points or not. We updated and changed out all of the building's common space, interior, exterior lighting with LED, okay, within the last year. These are things that, we have done on that. The windows in this building were replaced in the units sometime before they did the conversion by the previous owner when it was an apartment building. And the only window issues I have would be my front lobby, which are still single pane. I mean, they could be changed, but would these be enough to bring that type of thing up 25 points, I guess is my question.
So
yeah.
I can handle that if you don't mind. Windows are not going to have a huge impact on your Energy Star score, so we probably wouldn't start by looking at that. But I think it would be really important if you made improvements in 2018, then we want to make sure that your start date is in 2018, because the lower you have in the beginning of the cycle, it's going to be easier to achieve the improvement at the end of the cycle. So we got to make sure we're not starting with 2019 benchmarking data if we can find access to that 2018 benchmarking data.
This is the reason I asked this question. Before we got the meeting started, I brought it up before. I mean, I basically understand what you're trying to achieve, okay? And I'm still going to have to take this to my board. I've talked to my board about setting up a meeting with you to discuss all these issues. Again, I have a grasp of what needs to be done with this building, okay? And they rely on me, okay? As far as the square footages, I have the original prints. I don't agree with that 100,000+. I got to go back and look at the last reserve study from 19 and figure out, where we're at, the unit counts and so forth. But again, building's master metered. So it's basically, I didn't see a lot of utility bills back when I took this property over. I worked with Mark. There were bills after Kevin's death that didn't get paid on time. I don't know how much of that was for consumption in 17
Hey,
some
Mike.
of the buildings.
Hey, Mike,
Yeah.
let's save this for our individual meeting with Julian and AZ. Let's do that. We don't have to take up everybody's time with the
I'm not
carriage house.
take up everybody's time. That was the quick talking points. And again, when it comes time to set that meeting, Mark and I will work out a time with the board.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I appreciate you bringing that up, Mike. And we are going to go over what an energy audit looks like, and and what those types of improvements and what type of impact they could make in a score in a general standpoint. And then, of course, later on down the road, we're more than happy to go into a deep dive into the specifics of your property. So,
And I mean, when you look at electricity, you're looking at the exact, you're looking at the consumption, not the service provider fees that they tack on.
correct. Yeah, it's just however much the meter depicts.
Yeah, and I'm thinking that's pretty solid. Okay.
Yep. Okay. All right. Thanks, Mike. So now let's talk about penalties. So penalties, the basic formula is going to be $10. This is the maximum penalty. The maximum penalty, if you don't do anything, is going to be $10 per square foot, rounded down to the nearest $100,000. So these are some pretty serious penalties. If you've got and these are some examples, if you've got a 742,000 square foot building and you don't do anything and you're subject to BEPS, then that's a $7.4 million fine that I'm sure you would rather have invested in your building's infrastructure than just paying to the city. If you've got a 498,000 square foot building, $4.9 million penalty. I don't have to read through all of these, but it is important to notice that you get partial credit. So if you meet half of your goal, then you're going to have your maximum penalty reduced by half, right? So there's always an incentive to do something rather than nothing, right? Even if you don't completely meet your goal. Of course, it's going to be our goal that you completely hit your pathway and don't have any penalty. And it's also important to note that if you're on the standard target pathway and you're already close to the standard, so if you're a multifamily building and you're at 64 and you need a 66, you're not going to be subject to the maximum penalty if you don't do anything. There's going to be a pre-adjustment downwards that's going to be pretty substantial. And I'm not going to go into the exact mechanics of that, but just know that if you're already pretty high Energy Star score, you're going to be spared from these maximum penalties, but that's still not a license to do nothing, because the benefits of energy efficiency are more than just complying with this program. So as I mentioned, you do get partial credit. So if you're in the performance pathway, and as a reminder that your goal there is to reduce your EUI by 20%. So if you only reduce it by 10%, then you're going to have your penalty reduced by half of what the maximum would be. If you're on the standard target pathway, and remember, the goal for the standard target pathway is to get your Energy Star score up to the median. If you narrow that gap between where you're at and where the median is by 25%, then the penalty is only going to be 75% of what it would be if you did nothing. And then the prescriptive pathway, that's the point-based system. You have a goal of getting 25 points and you get 12 out of the 25 points, then you're going to only be paying 48% of your maximum penalty. And then for the alternative compliance pathway, if you're on this kind of overachiever pathway, we can go over that in detail in a subsequent call. But if you're in the alternative compliance pathway because you don't have good benchmarking data from 2018, then it's going to be the same as the performance, the standard target pathway. If you're able to reduce your EUI by 15%, then your maximum penalty is only going to be 25% of what it would be if you did nothing. Any questions on the penalty section here? All right. Okay, so we've spoken a lot about the nature of the program is, what happens if you do nothing, but let's actually talk about what you can do to comply with this program. And really the first step is prescribing energy efficiency improvements, and that is done through an ASHRAE Level 2 audit. And the key components of any ASHRAE Level 2 audit is they're going to document the building conditions, what the operational characteristics are, the space type. It could be multi-use space type. It's going to identify all that in the front of the report. And then it's going to break out your energy consumption by end use, whether it's your HVAC system, your lighting, washers and dryers. It's going to identify your hot water expense. It's going to break that down to a nice pie chart. It's then going to give you a list of potential ECMs. Those are energy conservation measures. We're going to use that term a lot, ECMs. They can also be called EEMs, energy efficiency measures, but those are all improvements that you can make to a building. And it's going to show you how those improvements are likely to either reduce your EUI or increase your Energy Star score. And then it's going to give you a return on investment analysis, basic financial metrics. So you and your board or you as an owner can make decisions on which ECMs you're going to invest in. And then it could also, the more sophisticated ones will create an interactive model that they can simulate present and proposed system improvements of how that's going to reduce your EUI or, again, improve your Energy Star score. So it's going to be, these ECMs are going to be divided into, 3 buckets. The low-hanging fruits are going to be low cost, no cost. And for those, a great one is a solar power purchase agreement. These cost nothing and can really help you if you're on the standard target pathway. Julian's going to go into greater detail about how solar can help you comply in a subsequent slide. LED lighting that was mentioned earlier. LED lighting tends to have a sub 2-year payback. So this, if you haven't already upgraded into LED, this can be one of the first measures. And we have some options where you can do it at no cost through a shared savings program. You can also look at some basic nighttime non-operational load management. Are you cooling your hallways to 67 degrees in the middle of the night when nobody's out in your hallways? That's an example of that. Optimize startup, power down, equipment sequencing. This is especially relevant for commercial and industrial settings. Implement incentives for a culture of conservation in your board. A lot of times awareness, making sure this is on people's radars, making sure they're not cranking their air conditioning in their units when they're not in their units and they leave for the weekend, that kind of thing. And then finally, chilled water reset. Usually a chilled water reset strategy raises the set point temperature when the building load is at less than designed conditions. Producing warmer chilled water lessens the burden on the compressor, which is often the most energy intensive aspect of that system, and can help that chiller consume less energy. So if you haven't looked at that kind of thing in a while, it's always good to take a second look. Or if you're just starting with a new building, it's nice to make sure that that type of strategy is being implemented. Moving on to the mid to high level improvements. Variable speed drives, or VSD. In older technologies, a lot of your HVAC system is either on and off. And I kind of use the analogy of, imagine if when you were driving, you only would either slam the brakes on or slam the accelerator on to maximum. So you're just kind of, jerking and stopping and jerking and stopping. You can imagine the efficiency of your engine if you did that. Nobody drives that way. Well, maybe some people drive that way, but they shouldn't. You want to slowly accelerate and slowly decelerate. And that's what a VSD system can help with your mechanicals in your building do. Variable refrigerant flow. This is an HVAC system that's a cutting edge technology. And the VRF systems are really cool. They can simultaneously heat some rooms and cool some others. Everybody has a different comfort level. This can help multifamily buildings. If you have somebody, some of the units are on the south side of the building, they're getting more natural sunlight. They don't need the same level of cooling as maybe a building on the bottom floor on the north side of the building compared to a unit on the top of the building. Then we can also look at hot water efficiency improvements through low flow shower heads, that kind of thing. Boiler upgrades, chiller replacements, combined heat and power. Those are really cool systems in which you can capture a lot of the heat loss and turn it into electricity. So you can simultaneously reduce heat that you don't need in the summer and convert that to electricity, which you can use. Energy management information systems. These are things like smart thermostats can really help when you've got a lot of users in your building. It can give you a central dashboard, and that can help you make these energy efficiency improvement decisions with. And then building window ceiling, this is building envelope things, window replacements. Again, these don't have a very good ROI, but if you already need to improve your windows, we can see how much of an impact that can have on your Energy Star score. And then retro commissioning is simply taking a look at some of your older systems and making sure that the way that they were engineered is still the way they're functioning currently. And you may need to make some adjustments or improvements to make sure they're functioning 100%.
And real quick, Izzy, just to add to that, when he mentioned the hot water efficiency improvements, just to clarify, so the only thing water related that will improve your Energy Star score or your EUI is anything that heats your water, that uses energy to heat the water. So if it's not related to hot water, for example, toilets or I guess sinks sometimes do, but that is not really something you want to focus on when it comes to BEPS. You really want to focus on possibly replacing your boiler or your domestic hot water systems. Those really will make the most impact.
Thanks for that, Julian. So this is an example from a recent energy audit that we did on a multifamily building here in DC. And it, the audit told us a lot of things, but also told us how much they can expect the cost of making these improvements will be, how long they'll pay for themselves through energy savings and operating savings. And then, of course, most germane to our conversation is how it's going to improve your Energy Star score. So LEDs, we mentioned, usually a 2-year payback or less, and that can actually add 9 points. That was estimated to add 9 points to this building's Energy Star score. Of course, every building is going to be different. You shouldn't, look at this and think it's always going to cost this amount. It's always going to improve this amount. Your energy audit is going to be tailored to your building. Install window films, $34,000 cost, pay for itself in 8 years, 7-point score. And then alluding to Julian's point, if you're looking at low flow improvements in water fixtures, that's a $40,000 improvement. It's going to pay for itself in 10 years. So, not as quick as the other two, but it's only going to improve your Energy Star score by 3. So if you're trying to budget what's going to have the biggest impact, this probably wouldn't be on the top of the list. And then the VRF system that I mentioned was estimated to cost around $1 million. That would be a 14-year payback, but it would improve their Energy Star score hugely. And we were working with this building. We actually found them a system substantially lower than that through our competitive sourcing. We got a system estimated at $750,000, and we're going to combine that with a solar PV system, which is going to give them 0-cent electricity and reduce that payback even further. So the hope is with this system, it's going to be all they need to do in order to achieve their standard target goal. And the goal is to get them to be from one of the least efficient buildings in their neighborhood to one of the most efficient buildings in their neighborhood. And we're pretty excited to be involved with them there.
And just like with most condo associations or co-op associations, they don't have $750,000 just sitting around. So we connected them with DC Green Bank, and they're actually currently continuing the conversation to find a way to finance this system.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to you, Julian. Talk about how solar can affect your Energy Star score.
Great, thanks, AZ. So to get started, if you do install solar, something we know is that it will for sure impact your Energy Star score. But unfortunately, it doesn't really impact your EUI, your energy usage intensity. The reason for that is the site EUI is really measuring just the energy being used on site. It doesn't matter where the energy is coming from, whether it's from Pepco or your own generation. However, if you were to go with the performance pathway where you have to reduce your EUI by 20%, it's still a good idea to look into solar if you have a good roof for solar, since you could receive money up front for leasing that roof space. And with that money, you can implement that into other energy conservation measures that will in fact reduce your EUI score. Now, we did a quick analysis. We looked at 4 different buildings that either already have gotten solar or are still looking into it. We measured the system size and how much that solar electricity is going to offset either their common area usage or their total energy usage. From the top of the list for one of the buildings, we were able to fit a 126 kilowatt system. It would offset 19%. And it increased their score pretty significantly. They were at a 48. And from our simulation, which we can help anybody with, it increased their score to a 64, which is very close to compliance. All they need to do is maybe a lighting project, and then they've hit above a 66. When we compare that same size system to the third line, so around the same size, 124 kilowatt, it only offset 10% of their usage. Every building is using a different amount of energy. Their score was at a 6, and it barely nudged it up to a 10, right? So for this building, we would typically recommend that they go with the performance pathway, and that they use the solar project to receive money up front to put towards other projects. Then we had another building where it was offsetting the same amount, 10%, smaller system, 72 kilowatts, but we found it interesting that it increased their score by more. So comparing the older one, increasing their score from a 6 to a 10, this other building has a smaller system offsetting the same amount, but it increased their score by 9 points from a 26 to a 35. The reason for this, we believe, after doing some analysis, was that the building on the third line is using a lot more gas in the building. So we believe that that is probably the reason why, but this is to show you that every building is different. And we would have to do an analysis really to understand how much it's going to impact both your Energy Star score and your EUI score, depending on the pathway you choose. Are there any questions regarding the slide? Okay, we're good. Great. So we completed the presentation in under 40 minutes, which is pretty good. We wanted to explain that we do offer BEPS consulting, and we recommend really proceeding with these next steps if you want to take this seriously. So first, even before that, we recommend if you do manage an association that, and especially if your building is subject to BEPS, your score is below a 66, that you first schedule a meeting with Honeydew so that we can essentially present the same presentation to the association, and really make it a little bit more customized towards their building, right? Where they fall compared to the score, what pathways we would recommend, so on and so forth. Then we would, if we didn't do the benchmarking report for the building, we would review their report. We'd make sure everything has been reported accurately. We actually ran into a building that reached out to us. We didn't do their benchmarking. After we reviewed it, we realized their square footage was off. When we did that, they went from being subject to BEPS with a score below a 66 to having a score in the 70s, not being subject to BEPS. But they still decided to make a few improvements to the building regardless, just to make sure their building stays efficient and they don't fall into the BEPS cycles in the future. After that, once you confirm that your score is accurate and you still are subject to BEPS and fall below the 66, we would schedule an energy audit. We can provide you with a few different options from companies in our network. We can show you what their reports look like. And then as soon as you proceed with the energy audit and they actually walk through your building and put together a report, we'll review the results of that report with you and determine which ECMs are most feasible to move forward with and will impact your score the most. And then from there, really report the pathway to the DOEE. Buildings are not required to report their pathway until April 1st, 2023. However, it's best to really get started as soon as possible on this so that you can cross that part out as soon as possible, and then start moving forward, implementing those energy conservation measures. From there, we're going to help simulate the Energy Star and EUI score impacts based on the different energy conservation measures. Not all energy auditing companies offer that service. And if you choose a company that doesn't offer it, we'll help you with that. From there, we'll develop a 5-year action plan to comply with BEPS, and that's essentially making sure that you are implementing these energy conservation measures on time so that you can see the savings in the last few years, and make sure that you have in fact complied. If you wait till the last minute, you implement a project, it's not saving you as much energy as you thought, then you could risk getting penalized for not fully complying at that time. And then once we understand which energy conservation measures you are going to proceed with, we will compare all different service companies or providers for that specific energy conservation measure and really help you choose the best solution moving forward. And then as you implement it, we're going to make sure to track your EUI and Energy Star scores to make sure that you are on track to complying to BEPS. Are there any questions? Great. So I think as a next step, if any of you guys, if you guys are managers for associations, your building does have a score below a 66, please feel free to reach out to either Andrew or I, and we'd be happy to set up a meeting with your board to really discuss the details of this and potential next steps for that building specifically. And Michael, we can always talk on the side about yours as well. We can set up a meeting between the board, yourself, and Mark.
One question.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that you're recording it. Will you be making this presentation available to us? Because our assistant manager was pulled away and didn't, missed a lot of it.